Hi, and welcome to another episode of Digging for Gold. I'm Dan Goldberg, and we have a very special guest today, Francesca Francois. Welcome, Francesca.
Nice to be here. Nice to see
Great.
you, Dan.
Great to have you here. She has a very interesting story and a very interesting business, so I'm going to let you proceed. Tell me about your business. Tell us about your business. Tell all of us about your business. What do you do?
Well, I am a talent agent. I'm a New York City talent agent, not a Hollywood agent. I'm a New York City talent agent. We basically do the same thing. My company is a talent and literary agency, so we represent writers, directors, actors, content creators, so that their content can be seen on TV, streaming platforms, just about anywhere. And we do it domestically in the United States and internationally.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That is very cool. And how has streaming affected your business?
Well, we were kind of a little bit lucky because we decided to focus on streaming way back when people were calling them web series or, web entities that nobody really wanted to get involved with because they felt there was no money. Our company decided to target them because the barriers for entry for working with studio deals were pretty high, and we were new, and we wanted to make a name for ourselves, starting with companies that we had access to. So we, worked with the streamers. We worked with, everybody who had a streaming platform. Netflix was a big one, Hulu. To kind of get to know their inside structure and how they did business.
Cool.
And then we started selling content to them and, providing talent, providing, different things that they were looking for. The way it's treated our company is positively because we were there in the beginning. It's changed a lot, from when, they were just on the outskirts. They weren't winning any Oscars or, Golden Globes weren't coming to them. Over the past, I would say, about 5 to 10 years, as you know that it's drastically changed.
Yeah.
HBO used to be the new girl on the block, and now it's Netflix and Hulu and coming up from the rear, Tubi, who we do a lot of business with as well. Tubi are trying to change their stars, trying to get out of the kind of programming they're in right now, and they're starting to really invest in higher net worth content that they can get out to their customers.
Wow, so it's to be or not to be, right? And who knew Hulu? Hulu is pretty cool. And then you got Netflix, two guys who started out selling, renting out DVDs.
Right. Yeah. I think their beginning was their founder. I forget his name. Hastings.
Yeah.
He didn't like paying late fees to Blockbuster. So
right.
He decided to come up with a model, and he was a serial entrepreneur anyway. So he decided to find a way that he could, not do that anymore, and that's how Netflix, became.
That's so interesting. That's like he was urinated off about paying late fees to Blockbuster, which is not in business anymore, and he's taking them over and everything, and they're worth billions and billions of dollars.
Now they are. I mean,
Yeah.
Blockbuster, like Barnes and Nobles, they were sleeping when Amazon came.
Yeah.
They ignored them. Blockbuster felt that, the model that they had, that, they were infallible, which they weren't, obviously.
No, they weren't infallible. And they did a great job at Netflix. They had some bumps. They did have
Yes.
some bumps. Everybody has bumps. And serial entrepreneurs always have bumps. People say, well, he went bankrupt here and he went bankrupt there. That's what happens to entrepreneurs. Either they can go bankrupt or they lose money or they're at the very edge of things and so forth, and they bounce back. And it's part of being an entrepreneur. You can't be risk adverse.
No, he wasn't. He
wasn't.
Absolutely wasn't.
And you're not.
Well, to a certain extent, I am. I don't want to be burned if I can help it.
No, of course. No entrepreneur wants that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be burnt. But it's like entrepreneurs are like on the edge.
Yes.
They're coming up with new ideas all the time.
Yeah, and you never know which one's going to fly. I had this one idea for sticking a shampoo in the shower upside down, and somebody said to me, that's been done, right? I thought it was the greatest idea ever.
There you go. That's like when my students are doing intrapreneurial things and entrepreneurial things. I said, and before you present them to the class and to me, make sure it's not done.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I'll never forget. Just recently, one group had a, just like we have our watches and so forth to track ourselves and all. They had one for pets. It was a collar, and I went, wait a minute, it's being done.
Yeah.
And you see the commercials and so forth, and that happens a lot, but it's okay because you got to see that, and then you say, okay, that's not working. Let me see what else is.
Right. Just
So-
pivoting.
So give me some highlights about your business, people you've worked with, shows that you've dealt with,
Oh.
things like that.
Well, the biggest client I've ever worked with was Vin Diesel. Vin was, when he was doing multifacial, he had his very first short film was multifacial. He gave it to me, and he said, you know, we've got to try and sell this. And multifacial was about the many faces of who people thought he was. He's mixed race, and, you know, he could be Italian, he could be Jewish, he could be black, he could be, you know what I mean? So multifacial was just about all the different multifacials that he could be, you know, as somebody who could play all these roles. So I was going around, at the time I was at a company called ICM, International Creative Management. It's one of the largest talent agencies actually in the world, next to William Morris and CAA. They were like, you know, didn't want his stuff. They were like, who is this guy? You know, he's got this really deep voice. Nobody can understand what he's saying. I had just come to ICM. I was in the mailroom, and I said, I have this client that you've got to meet with him. And I was running around all the 8 different agents asking them, would you like to take a look at this video? And they were like, no, just, you know, go back to the mailroom and push the mail cart, and then you'll be doing your job. So I decided that I was going to go out and bring it to some other people. And Vin was like, you know, we got to go to Cannes. So we flew to Cannes Film Festival, and we sneaked into the Variety party, the Variety magazine party. And there was a woman there who at the time was head of Paramount. Her name was Sherry Lansing.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and Vin Diesel got in front of her and, you know, got her the tape. And, you know, a few weeks later, she contacted him. It was a bigger story than that. But what ended up happening was that he ended up getting support from her to get another film made and, you know, to get
Wow.
multifacial done. And it was
That
just
is
a whole
pretty
thing.
cool.
It was a calling card. Vin Diesel is one of the most successful actors that I've worked with. When I went to, well, first of all, I was an agent at Fifi Oscard Agency, which was the very first company that hired me, and they only hired me because I told them I would work for free. So I said,
Free is good. That's a very good price. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
because they weren't hiring anyone. I said, can you teach me? I'd love to become an agent. They were like, we don't need anybody. I said, well, do you know anybody? You don't need anyone who could sit on the reception desk for free. So she said, come on in. So I sat there for 2 weeks. I said, if you feel at the end of 2 or 3 weeks that I would be worth paying, then you could do that. And at the end of the second week, she says, I'll give you $50 a week. I thought I was rich. I was like, wow, $50. So I stayed there.
good.
I stayed at Fifi Oscar for almost 2 years. And while I was there, I worked, I was like a spinning top. So I would go out looking for clients, and I would book jobs for Macy's. Macy's was one of the ones that would book my children. I would bring children to them because at the time I was moonlighting at another company, a management company, and the management company was run by a friend of mine that I had met, you know, a while ago, and he represented strippers. And when I was there,
You mean people that painted strips on the street, right?
No, women that take their clothes
Oh,
off.
take their clothing
Yes.
off, of course.
And
yes.
they didn't have anyone to take care of their kids. So as a
Oh.
receptionist, I used to, you know, babysit the kids while they were at the club or whatever. And I said, we should be able to do something, because there was something like 15 kids or something like that. So I used to send their pictures out to different companies, and Macy's would book them. And I had these 2 twins that earned more than their mom made.
Wow.
In the club. So they said, oh, you should do this more. So, you know, when Fifi Oscar took me, I went looking for more clients. But this time I found, what's her name? It escapes me right now, her name. Misha Barton.
Oh, yeah.
Misha
Good.
Barton was
Okay.
one. Vin Diesel. I had oh my God, Anthony Rapp. He's in Star Trek right now. There was a whole bunch of clients that I tried to move over to ICM, but because I was in the mailroom, they weren't taking any clients from me. After I'd been there for about a year, I was in the mailroom. They decided that they wanted to take me out of the mailroom, put me in motion pictures.
Oh.
Yes. So
Oh,
while
that's
I was
pretty
in
cool.
motion pictures, I was working for a super agent at that point.
What's a super agent?
A super agent is somebody who just has bona fide stars on their roster. So somebody like Mike Ovitz from CAA, Ron Meyer. This particular lady, her name was Andrea Eastman. She represented clients like, at the time, this was about, 25 years ago. She represented Richard Gere. She had Julia Roberts. She had Billy Crystal. We had Delroy Lindo, Angela Bassett, and they were people that she would go out on the set and, represent them, find new jobs for them. And I was vying to be on her desk. And she had this protocol that she always wanted a male and female to take care of her desk. And she had a great female already, so I had to wait until that female either left or died, and then I would be able to come in.
Oh, wait a minute. Did she leave or did she die?
Neither, because I think I was on the desk all the time because I made myself on the desk. But her name is Leora. She was a great friend of mine. She stayed on the desk for a long time. Andrea's still around. I talk to her very, very sporadically. But at the time, I used to make some big mistakes. While I was on the desk, Henry Winkler Henry Winkler was one of the clients as well, and I sent his 50th birthday present to him, but I sent it regular mail, but I didn't know it was a glass plaque, and it got smashed into pieces. So Andrea got called like, fire whoever sent that to me. She didn't fire me, thank God. I brought her more clients. At the time, Sean Bean, Rufus Sewell, these were all actors I was trying to bring to ICM. And I said, these are going to be really good guys. They were like, we don't know who they are. And then Triple X came out. Triple X was a movie that Vin Diesel did. And the head of the agency brought me in and said, you remember that kid that you were trying to, shop to us last year? Can you bring him back? And I said, well, he's already been signed by another agency, so no. And then Vin Diesel went on to make like 500 movies after that. Yeah. But they lost out, and they were like, go get him, bring him here. And I'm like, it's not happening. Sorry.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah, but now so tell us about now.
So now the agency that I'm in, my own agency.
And its name again is?
Crystal Ship Artist, Talent, and Literary. It's in New York City.
What's your website?
It's crystalshipartist.com. Crystalshipartist.com. And what we do is I personally represent directors. I do directors, and then I do actors as well. My partner, Sharon Parker Frazier, she represents writers, content creators, and then we have other partners who represent other types of clients. My company now, we're working with studios to, if somebody makes a script to screen. The literary part of our agency is for scripts, not books. So somebody who writes, an article or a script or a treatment or a summary, we can take that to, maybe a Fox or a Sony or, Hulu or Netflix. We will take it to all of our vendors and say, would you like to develop or make this project? And then they'll say yes, no, or we'd like to do this with it. Sometimes we provide the director for, like we just did with Tubi, we provided directors for their movies that they wanted to elevate themselves with. They were making bigger budget movies. So we would provide them with writers, selections of writers, directors, and they would book some. And, that's what we would, that's what we do now.
Yeah,
and we do that with actors as well.
Do you also represent actors for commercials?
No.
You don't.
We don't. No, we don't do commercial. You see, the thing about the medium, this is another thing. A lot of people don't really understand the business. Whereas, like, an agent who represents an actor for commercials is not the same as an agent who represents them for film and television. Those are completely different mediums. Commercials are rapid fire. Does that person have nice hands? We need a mom who is, got diabetes or something like that. Commercials are very, very, very quick. Film and television is a little bit longer lead time. Well, my speciality is we have a lot of actors who go to Law and Order, FBI, all of the New York shows, Elspeth. We do the LA shows as well, but we put actors in those types of shows where they have to audition. The casting director takes a look at what they call an eco-cast, which is a taped audition. They send it to their producers and their directors. The directors send it to the network. The network says, yes, we like this person, and then that person gets booked. Sometimes that could take a week. Sometimes it could take 3 weeks. But it's not like a commercial where you get the job yesterday, you shoot it today.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very, very different.
I worked with someone who was in a lot of commercials.
Commercials are great money if you're, if you get booked a lot.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let me see. Let's talk about our sponsor for the commercial. No, I'm kidding. But I love that. I mean, that whole industry is phenomenal. And where do you see it going right now?
Oh boy.
I mean, there's Who Knew Hulu and Yumi Tumi, 2B or whatever, and all great venues, right? But what's the next thing? I look at entertainment like it used to be when I was a kid, by the Civil War in the United States. Shortly thereafter, we had Channel 3, Channel 6, Channel 10, Channel 12, which was a commercial channel at the time. And then as I got a little older, we had 17, 29, 48, and 63 UHF. Now there's got to be like 800 channels. It's wild, it's crazy, and you wonder how they all make money. Okay, so that's one thing, the economics of the whole bit. And of course, then they have streaming platforms for the broadcast TV stations, right? And the cable TV stations, they all have streaming platforms. What's next? I mean, we're looking at Netflix that started off sending out DVDs, and now my DVD player is like worthless, right? Because it's all streaming and everything. Where next? What do you see?
Personally, I see a globalization happening, especially for streaming. The only reason why the studios have streaming platforms is because the streaming model worked. Mm-hmm. And the cablers, same thing. They have streaming platforms because the streaming model worked. The streaming model, it's like how Apple Music colonized the music industry. Mm-hmm. That's where I see the film and television industry heading to a colonization by just a few companies. Now, these companies more than likely will be global. Netflix is already moving in that direction by buying content from Korea, South Korea. Asia has a lot of content. If anybody watches Vicky, Vicky, they're siphoning a lot of content from there. They're remaking them, dubbing them, subtitling them. And what's happening, if you notice on Netflix, is that they're opening up the consumer palette. The consumer palette in a way that you don't just watch stuff from your own backyard. You can get stuff from anywhere. Mm-hmm. And with that type of globalization, you're looking, like when you talked about monetarily, how do these people make money? Mm-hmm. They make money in niches. And you have to remember, there's still a lot of cross-pollination that can happen with other industries. And one of the major cross-pollinations that's going to happen, which is already happening now, is gaming.
Oh, yeah.
That's the cross-pollination that's happening.
Our last podcast, mm-hmm. Thomas Northern, who was ranked number 8th in the world in gaming for, what was it? Oh, my Lord, I was just talking about it. Black Ops 3, okay? And I asked him about gaming. So you could actually have streamers having streaming gaming, right?
Well,
I think
you
there is
have
now.
that now,
That
yeah.
is now.
But in a way that you can use big IP, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they're already doing it with large IP like Harry Potter. You can get Harry Potter games. It hasn't, you know, the segmentation of the different types of gamers that you get. I mean, you know, somebody who's doing Black Ops 3 might not want to game on Harry Potter, you know, but, you know,
That's true.
but like, you know, the cross pollen, that industry is it's huge. It's larger than the entertainment industry the way it sits
Really.
right now.
Well, what do you see happening to broadcast TV?
Broadcast TV is not going to go away because of the live aspect.
Okay.
Broadcast TV has a home with news, you know, shows that appeal more to the older generation right now. But if when they start to die off, and the millennials and the Gen Zers start getting up in age, they're going to want to consume things the way that they remembered of how to consume, and that still has broadcast TV in it. You may get a squeezing out of broadcast TV where it'll move directly to a streaming or a more kind of like open platform when you start getting the generation that is used to it being that way, which would more be the Gen Zers, and you know, the generation after that might squeeze out. But then, you know, the bigger broadcasters would have moved to that the same way that you know, Disney saw that streaming platforms, now we got Disney Plus, and they'll morph themselves into whatever it is that they need to be so that they can be consumed by whoever's coming next.
So ABC is Disney, right?
Yes.
And NBC is Comcast.
Yes. Well, remember, they're all being cannibalized. They're all eating each other.
They are eating each other.
Yeah.
It's an eat or be eaten world.
Or start something else. I mean, it'll be very difficult to eat Netflix.
It will be.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Unless
yeah.
you're talking about a completely different model, or you're bringing something in. You know, the subscription model works, but only to a point. You know, to dive into, you know, you can only raise prices of the subscription, but what else can you get them to buy? You know, and if they start cutting the cord, as it was in cable, and then now they don't want to stream with you, they want to stream with, you know, Tubi. Well, Tubi's free, but like they want to stream with somebody else. You can't stop that subscriber from leaving.
That's right.
And the money's gone.
And Netflix went through something like that, didn't
Yes.
they?
Yes.
And then they changed things.
Well, what they did was that they knew that they had to diversify their pricing.
Yes.
They needed to have a version that people could afford. That $5.99 model isn't something that, like, you know, the people want to see that. If they just, because like right now, if you want everything Netflix with no ads, you're paying 25 something bucks, a month. But you know, there's people, they're like, I'm not paying 25. Well, I can pay $7.99 for this. Yeah. So Netflix has to find a way to keep those guys and to keep raising it. And what they do is they start to partition, like Comcast. What Comcast did was when they used to give you internet, you got internet.
Right.
Now you have internet boost. You have internet, you know, you have lots of devices. We're going to give you faster internet, but they charge you for that.
They charge you for everything.
Exactly.
I just got my Comcast bill on my, you know, we've deducted your blah, blah, blah. And the same thing with Verizon. Verizon has the same stuff.
Yeah.
They're all categorizing.
Well, they have to grow.
They do have to grow.
Yeah.
And consequently, so do their consumers. They have to make sure they're making money. And then we have to know that there's more people. I always think of it this way. If the population stagnates, right? Let's say you got 330 million people in the United States. In 10 years from now, if you only have 330 million people again, how much can those 330 million people absorb as far as monetary outlays go? They'd have to start making more money, or you need more people.
or they need to reprioritize what they believe to be important. Because
Correct.
if you're now buying something from Comcast, you buy one thing from Comcast. Comcast will make it easy for you to buy 2 or 3 things. So yours consumer base now. Comcast doesn't care if they're getting $26 from one person or 3 people. So
Correct.
it's $26, or whatever they're selling. $26, $26. That could come from the same person. So now you're turning 330 million people into 600 and something million.
Well, that's true. Plus, you did mention the globalization.
Right.
So that's why they got to expand out. You know, if they can, if the geography is the globe, and you're selling to people in England, and you're selling to people in Canada, and you're selling to people in France, right? Whether it's dubbed or you make certain shows in French or Turkish or Swahili or whatever it is, you're getting global reach. The
Yes.
same show, but it's difficult.
It is, because the countries, the different GDPs don't support.
Match up.
Yeah, they don't match up. Something that is affordable in, Nigeria is not affordable for the people in the Congo.
That's
But
true.
they still want to watch Batman. They still want to watch Superman. So how do you make it that this country is, able to afford something? Do they? That's why they tried to do Quibi. Quibi was an app that you got on your phone that Jeffrey Katzenberg was trying to do, that you could consume all the different shows on your phone. Now, a lot of the different shows don't translate on your phone. I mean, if you want to do a blockbuster like Gladiator, you want to watch that on your phone. But the thing is that, the short form content worked in some areas, and it didn't work in other areas. And the longer form, the more expensive, like the dramas, the 1-hour dramas, are very expensive. A lot of countries, especially because of the geo-blocking, can't afford to take one IP like a Downton Abbey IP. They have to wait until it's older or more watered down, or maybe they can only take a certain version of it to somewhere else.
Well, what makes it more expensive? Once something's produced, okay, I produce a show. The show's produced. I have people in it, stars, there's producers and everything else. That show exists.
But you want to recoup what you put into it.
Of course, yes. But if I sell it first in the United States, right, and I've recouped my investment. I've recouped my investment. It cost me $30 million to make it. I've sold it to outlets and to Netflix maybe, or to AMC or whomever, and I recoup my $30 million. Why can't I sell it to Nigeria for whatever, a minimum amount, or the Congo, or France, or Turkey, or whatever, or Argentina, all over the globe? Because no matter what I'm making, it's adding to my revenue. My revenue has already been recouped.
When you say
outlay.
you're speaking of yourself as a producer.
No, I'm speaking as the company.
You're speaking as the company who made the product?
Yes, I'm speaking as the company who made the product.
First of all, there's a lot of companies that make one product. And you're going, no matter where you are or what you do, you're still going to be subject to the distribution chain. That is where people kind of like get lost at sea. The distribution chain is something that if you have a short film,
Right.
and you want this short film to be shown somewhere, somebody has to exhibit it.
Correct.
Unless you want to run around, showing people on your phone.
Here's my short film. You only got a minute to look at it. It's very short. Here's my film. It's short.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're going to have somebody to distribute it. Now, those people are usually gatekept by sales agents, people that go out and buy content to bring to the distributor. Now, depending on what distributor they have, the distributor, usually they have territories.
Right.
So those territories have to be bought. And all of these costs get passed through. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than I'm saying, but
sure.
each of these territories have to be bought. Now, as a producer, every time you slice up that right, every time you give something to somebody, They get paid, you get paid, and all the people in between have to get paid too. The government, all the taxations, the movement, how many minutes. I mean, it goes on and on. There's a laundry list of stuff that you can do. Now, if you go to a distributor like Universal Releasing they have sales agent or people that can show your product to different theaters around the world, but it's their lines, and you have to pay them to use that. Distributors,
I get you. Yeah.
it's like the exhibitors, the theater owners. You can't just go to the theater owner and say, "Hey, can you put on my film in your theater?" That's a chain.
I have a great film that I wanted to show.
And how many theaters you gonna put it in? 2?
Yeah,
you know,
that's
I mean,
not good.
what markets are you going to put it in? Like Chicago and Idaho? I mean, like,
I was just thinking about Chicago and Idaho. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're going to want the major markets,
Yeah.
which is the A market. I mean, commercials kind of touch on that. When they run a commercial, they run it in the
Sure.
major markets, so the secondary markets. There's a whole slicing and dicing and hierarchy of how you get content to navigate through
Yeah.
so that you can get to the consumer.
It's actually even more complicated than the typical supply chain
Yes.
of things. It's like, I was in the optical business and I had stores all over the country. And so what I would do is you buy from either France or India or China or Israel or Canada. And it comes in,
And you have to pay all the different.
Yeah, you have to pay all the different people and the reps. The reps get their slice. The manufacturer gets their slice. Then I distribute it to my stores. Okay.
And that's transportation costs and distribution costs. That's part of the distribution.
Yes, and then I have, if I, for instance, I used to buy a lot of frames from Italy, and so many that I would tie up the factory. Basically, that factory was almost owned by us because everything they were manufacturing, we bought up to a point. Then they said, well, wait a minute, we can't depend on one client, right? But then I turned that into a wholesale business. So my frames then needed wholesale distributors and distributors of other
And they
chains.
were different than the retail ones.
Yes, they were different. So there's all these nuances, and all along the way, somebody makes money.
And as somebody's got to pay that. And different people take on different types of costs.
Yes.
And, at the end of the day, as the company recouping, you need to recoup more than just the $30 million. You need to recoup maybe double that to make your $30 million back.
Yeah, that's true.
If everybody's going to get paid, that is.
Yes. Not everybody's like you as a receptionist and say, I'll work here for nothing. Right? So that's true. But it is interesting how your journey was. You were committed to something. You could see it. You could see what you wanted to do.
It's more I saw what I wanted to be rather than what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was good at a lot of things, but I wasn't great at anything. I felt that, like I said, I was a spinning top. I was great at athletics. I was great at school. I was great at everything, but I was a B plus student. Why wasn't I an A student? I mean, when I was doing athletics, I always came in second. I got a silver. I always got something, but I never got gold.
You got gold now. Plus, you're digging for gold. You're on digging for gold.
I'm digging for gold. I got gold now.
Great.
Yeah.
See.
So I knew I wanted to do something notable. I wanted to be a notable person, but I didn't know how to do that or what that actually would entail. And I still haven't done anything really notable, but that was what I was always pursuing. How can I do something notable that I can look back and say, hey, I did that?
Vin Diesel.
Well, yeah, but Vin Diesel is his own star. I mean,
of course he is, but you helped him get to where he is.
I did in a very small way, because after he left me, he went and did, I didn't have anything to do with Fast and Furious. I mean, that's all. He did everything. He was a force in itself. If you ever met him, he's someone who is extremely driven. But he's another person that will tell you, I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
he needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And he knew the general direction he needed to go in, and he just kept taking a step forward in there, trying to figure out what that end would look like. But he's very driven, and I got not a lot, but some of that rubbed off because I would see how focused he was, and I'd be like, you know what, I gotta pick something and go stick to it. You know what I mean? And that's what I did.
Yeah,
That's what
but
I
you're
did.
doing great.
Yeah, it feels good.
And you're in Manhattan.
In Manhattan, Midtown on 55th Street. We've been there for the entire 5 years. I like it there. We have a theater, a Dolby Theater, 88-seater in the
Really?
in our lobby, which we have a lot of people come in and do their screenings there. We just recently became a member of BAFTA, the British Academy Awards. We became a member of that. As a Brit, I was like, hey, why am I not a member?
That's true. I understand completely. I do, really.
Yeah. So we just joined BAFTA, and then in June, I go to meet everybody because we're going to the inaugural South by Southwest in London.
London in England, you
London,
are.
England.
Yes, it's great.
Yes, it's the very first one.
It's wonderful. Yes. That's great. And I I've told you this many times. Everything sounds better with a British accent. So this is phenomenal.
I always thought I lost my accent.
No,
but it's
you
still
haven't.
There.
You haven't at all.
That was 20. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to become more British as I go along now. I'm thinking about it.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to become more British. It's crazy, isn't it? It's like, and I didn't start off that way, but it's very interesting to me. It's fascinating, the trip you've taken, and in an industry that's so complex, but at the same time, people thirst for it. They thirst for that stardom. They thirst for that industry. That whole industry, including this, actually, including podcasting, is recognition. Right? It is. And anybody who's in entertainment, it's recognition. And and I said this last time that I was in entertainment, that, for years, and I worked with quite a few well-known comics and entertainers. My oldest son, he was an entertainer, and it's a fascinating business because it allows you to express yourselves in ways that most people don't.
I think that's the allure of it, the fact that you have the ability to express yourself. But my end of things, it's not like that. It's business.
It is business.
Yeah, I mean, you have to create. As a business person, I help creatives find their voices. People say to me, how can I be, get further in this business? You have to be more business minded, because it really is.
It's a business.
It's a business. We take on interns at our company all the time, and as soon as I find out they want to be an actor, I don't hire them. Because you cannot mix the two. That creative spirit in you that wants to, like you said, wants the recognition and the notoriety, or that I want to be known. You cannot do that as an agent. You just can't, because it's in conflict with what you want to do. My whole thing, I'm very invested in my clients. The directors that I work with, I know every nuance of their work. I know how they work. I know, what brings out the best in them. I know the situations that they need to be in. I know what the contract should look like, how they should be treated, what kind of companies really suit them. That is something that, as an agent, I make that happen. So I don't sit there thinking, how can I make myself heard? I mean, I don't need to be heard.
Yeah, it's true. By the same token, there are some very famous agents.
Yes.
There are.
Yes.
And they themselves have become entities.
But they're famous for a reason.
Yeah,
Lou
of course.
Pitt was one. Lou Pitt used to represent Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was in his heyday and everything. And the bigger the agent, the more, like, you'll find that their clients have been with them for many, many years, and you'll find that many of those clients are not even signed.
Really, just stay with them.
They just stay with them. Lou Pitt was great like that.
And Lou gets his 15% or 10% or
10%. Well, yeah, we're regulated at 10%.
10%.
Yeah, but you know, they stay with them because these agents know that client so well. There's a lot of poaching because somebody will say, "Hey, I could do this better than he can." But when you've forged a relationship with somebody for 15, 20 years, and like J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, her agent is Elaine Goldsmith. Elaine Goldsmith was at ICM when I was there. Elaine Goldsmith Thomas when she got married, but Elaine had Madonna, she had J-Lo, she had Halle Berry, and she still has them today.
Really?
Why is Elaine Goldsmith still working with Halle Berry and Jennifer Aniston and J-Lo? Is because she knows them so well. Like
family.
She doesn't even, when she sees a contract, it could be 100 pages and she'll say, this section. You don't need a lawyer because she's been with J-Lo for so long. J-Lo doesn't have to turn around and say, I need to have this. Do you know how much teaching J-Lo would have to do for a new agent?
Yes, of course.
You just don't want to do that. Even though, I mean, like I said, you'll find that there is poaching, or there is, you know, a client will move to another agent, but it's rarer than you think. I have clients that, like, you know, been with me for years, since when I started being an agent, that are still with me today because they know that I'm looking out for them. You know, it's when you're with somebody and you say, can you find me a job? Can you find me a job, and can you help me navigate this industry so I do my best? Are two different things.
Yeah, it's like having a business and having your business lawyer.
Yes.
And as you expand, you're not going to, this lawyer knows you from the beginning. They know everything you're doing. They know how you grow. That's the way it was with me, that I didn't drift all over.
And if another lawyer came to you and said, Dan, I could do a better job than him,
I'd say, like, no, he's been with me forever.
Exactly.
He knows me like the back of his hand.
Right. And then say you did say, hey, I want to go to this new lawyer. Do you know how much transference you're going to have to do,
of course,
to this new guy? And then he's going to keep coming back to you and saying, so, Dan, what about... You'd be like, just give me the old guy.
It's a waste of time.
Exactly.
It's a waste of time. And time is finite.
Right.
So you have to say, where am I using my time the most appropriately?
And who's helping me use it to its maximum potential? Exactly. And if you have an agent who's really doing their job, you know, I'm like a second, third, and fourth person for that person. So you're in the industry looking for something. I'm three people
ahead
doing the same thing that you're doing, doing it more consistently. Because when you're working on the set or you're directing, you're spending, you know, 20, 30, 40 days of just working on that. I'm looking for another job for you. I'm trying to find you another place so when you finish that, you're going to have this. And when you go to that next thing, it's set up. You've got everything you want in your contract. You've got the money that you want. You've got your next job. You're going to fly, you know, you're working with the friend the DP that you've always wanted to work with from 2 pictures ago that you couldn't get. All of that is there. And it's not because you turn around, did you get the DP that I wanted? You don't have to do any of that. You know what I mean? So the value of anybody that you work with,
correct,
is how do they fit to me?
Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. You're my next agent. You're my agent because you know me, and why would I change to anybody else? This has been fantastic. Francesca Francois, please say the name of your company again and your website.
It's Crystal Ship Artists Talent and Literary Agency, Midtown Manhattan. You know, you can find us online, crystalshipartists.com.
This has been great, and I've learned so much, and I hope you've learned so much, all our viewers and so forth. Francesca, thank you so much for this.
You're welcome. It was fun. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, folks. We'll see you at the next episode of Digging for Gold. I'm Dan Goldberg. That's Francesca Francois. We'll see you soon.